Dr. Sharon Ufberg returns with her 51% segment, Force of Nature. This time, she interviews Wendy Knox, a self-proclaimed author, artist, and uplifter. Knox's mission is to uplift and inspire others to transform their muck into magic. And her book is called From Muck to Magic, an Uplifting Journey. She says it's a journey from self-doubt to self-love. Ufberg asked Knox about her story. What's the muck and what's the magic?
Well, Sharon, I'll start with the muck. In my past life, I was the only female senior vice president creative director at one of the largest advertising agencies in Los Angeles. Kind of like Don Draper in Mad Men, but without the cigarettes or the martinis. Even though I created award-winning commercials for brands like Acura and Honda, my soul longed for something more. Unexpectedly, I was forced to find it when I lost my execuwoman job at 50 and found myself stuck in the muck of self-doubt, fear, and now what? Sobbing in my backyard, I asked the universe, am I too old to reinvent myself? Please give me a sign. I went for a walk in my neighborhood, and when I came home, I found hundreds of red dragonflies whirling and swirling above my garden like a dragonfly ballet. It was unbelievable. I'd never seen anything like it. And they stayed for 4 hours the first day and came back for 3 more days. Well, at that point, I did what anyone would do. I Googled dragonflies, and I learned something amazing. Dragonflies spend most of their lives crawling in the muck at the bottom of a pond. And while they're down there, they shed old versions of themselves and grow new ones over 4 years. And then one seemingly random day, the dragonfly crawls out of the pond and into the light, and her wings unfurl. It turns out they were growing the whole time she was in the muck. And she doesn't even fly until later in life. So I asked for a sign, and boy, did I get one. I realized they must be coming to me because I was a dragonfly, and I was growing my magic in the muck. But that was just the beginning. I started seeing dragonflies everywhere I went, on the freeways, on shopping boulevards. One day I was walking across a golf course on the way to lunch, and there was another swarm of red dragonflies, and I thought, okay, that's it. These dragonflies, they must know I have a background as a copywriter and a branding specialist, and I think they want me to get their story out into the world. So that's exactly what I'm doing now. I've written and painted a book, like you said, called From Muck to Magic, which really takes people through the journey of the dragonfly, through our darkness, through the blues and blahs of life, into the light of possibilities, from our muck into our magic. And it's my way of sharing the dragonfly story to help others change their story.
I really hear the passion in your voice when you start to tell us about this very metaphorical experience you had. And I'm curious why you feel so compelled to share the story through your art and your poetry with other women.
Well, first of all, it felt like a miracle, and it's not something that happens every day. It certainly hasn't happened since. I'll see a dragonfly here or there, but never, a whole huge congregation of them. So I felt this happened and came to me for a reason, and the dragonfly story really helped me look at my story differently. And I want to share it with others because there's so much in our lives that we can't control, but we can control how we look at it. And this story gives us a paradigm for changing how we view our life. We can look at it as there's gifts growing in our struggles. There's magic growing in our muck, and it's such a different way to see it. It takes us from being a victim into being a victor. And I believe, in my experience, I've seen that life is a continuing process from muck to magic and back again. It turned out that losing my job at 50 was not the worst thing that ever happened to me. Almost losing my only child to addiction was. And as I found myself stuck in the muck of the deepest kind of fear and grief and angst, there was some more magic that emerged. There was the magic of hope and encouragement in thinking about the dragonfly. Like the dragonfly crawls through the muck, I allowed myself to be in those dark feelings, not to fight them, but to surrender. And in that surrendering, many, many gifts were born. Among them was this book. I found, I was sitting one day at my computer and the words to a poem just came to me. It started, have you ever been so stuck in the muck with the yuck and the guck that you thought, what the muck? And it goes from there, taking us through the feelings that come to us and the sadness and the grief that we all go through as humans. And through the poem is sort of this journey, this recipe for self-love and taking care of ourselves. So as women, I feel like we take care of everybody, and it's hard to take care of ourselves. And this book I'm offering to the women of the world is sort of a soothing balm for the soul, whether you're having a bad day or a dark night of the soul, whether you're going through a change, a transition, a big birthday, a divorce, whatever it is, the dragonfly story helps us see our story differently. It invites us to go into the dark to find our light, through our struggles to find our gifts, and into the muck to find our magic. And I think it's so reassuring and such a healing way to look at life. And that's why I'm so compelled to share it with women, because it's helped me so much. And I want to share it with other women who I know are going through the same kinds of things that I've gone through.
So do you feel that this rising up from your own personal muck to find your own magic is a uniquely women's story?
Well, that's a really good question. When I speak to groups of people and I talk about women, there's always a couple men that go, well, wait a second, I relate to this story too. I relate to going through dark times to find my light and, you know, the muck of adversity and the gifts. But I do feel that women in particular have more kind of emotional muck. I feel like we've had more to overcome in our society, and now seems to be a time with Me Too, Time's Up, where women are starting to really speak up for themselves. But what I found is we also need to not just stand up in the world, we need to stand up to the voices inside of our heads. So many of us have taken in these kind of diminishing critical voices, some of which, you know, we've inherited through the voices of society and the culture, or some of us from our upbringing. But those voices in our heads that tell us you're not enough, you're not this enough, or thin enough, or young enough, or you're too sensitive, or too scattered, or not strong enough, or you're too vulnerable, or the big one is you're too old. I think in my process of reinvention, which I know so many women go through at midlife, it's really challenging because that voice in our heads will tell us you're too old, are you crazy, why are you trying this or that? And one of the things I really love about the dragonfly story is they don't even fly until later in life. And I know for myself, I didn't get my first book published until I was 65, and I just had my first art exhibit at 65 in a gallery. And I've had to do a lot of work on that voice in my head, the voice that says, you're not really an artist, and who do you think you are? And I believe a lot of women have that voice in their heads. And this book, through my paintings and through the poem, it takes you through those feelings, and it helps you love yourself through them. And, you know, I think this world can use a lot more love, and I think it starts with each one of us embracing and nourishing and nurturing ourselves. And that's why I think it's primarily a women's story. one of the paintings in my book is really a self-portrait of me when I was in the executive world and had a big red zipper on my mouth. And I think lots of times as women, it's hard for us to really speak up and advocate for ourselves. And I think this book gives you permission to do that in a very gentle and loving way. And I've talked to young girls who have said it gave them courage and inspiration, and I've talked to 70-year-old women who said it gave them permission to finally bring their art into the world. So I think there's a lot of healing inside of it for women of all ages and open-hearted men too.
Wendy, the book is beautiful and inspirational. The poetry is easy to take in and open up to one's own unique gifts. I'm so happy you were here with us today. Can you tell people how to find your book and how to find you?
Oh, definitely. I think the best way is to go to my website, which is wendyknox.com. But it's Wendy with an I, even though my mother named me with a Y. I changed it to an I because I wanted to be different. So it's Wendy, WENDI, Knox, KNOX.com. So wendyknox.com is where you'll find my book. And I'm also going to start making giclées of my paintings because so many people have asked for it. So all that will be on my website along with my blog, which I think is pretty uplifting and inspiring as well.
Thanks so much for being with us today. That was Wendy Knox, and this is Sharon Ufberg on Force of Nature for 51%.